The house felt unbearably silent after the funeral, every corner heavy with memories of a life that had slipped away. I sat alone at the dining table, staring at a half-finished cup of coffee, feeling more lost than I had ever thought possible. The weight of loneliness wrapped around me like a thick, unrelenting fog. Just when I thought the night would swallow me whole, there was a soft knock at the door. 5'6", his eyes filled with something I could not yet understand, something that would change everything. The moment I saw him standing there, a strange shiver ran through me. Jason, my son's best friend, looked different under the porch light. He was no longer the lanky teenager who used to raid our refrigerator and fall asleep in the living room after video game marathons. Now he stood tall, broad-shouldered, his face carrying the seriousness of a man who had seen the world and felt its weight. For a second, neither of us spoke. The night air hung between us, thick with things left unsaid. "I am sorry for your loss," he finally said, his voice deeper and more grounded than I remembered. I nodded, unable to find words. Grief had robbed me of so much: my husband, my laughter, my sense of belonging, and now, even my voice. Jason shifted awkwardly, holding a small container in his hand. "I brought you something," he added, holding it out. A simple, homemade casserole. It was a gesture so small and yet so enormous that it shattered the fragile dam I had built inside myself. "Thank you," I whispered, stepping aside to let him in. The house swallowed him in an instant, like it was starved for life and sound. He set the casserole down on the kitchen counter and turned to me, concern etched across his features. "How are you holding up?" he asked gently, his eyes searching mine in a way that made me feel seen, really seen, for the first time in weeks. I gave a tight, humorless smile. "Surviving," I said, my voice cracking on the word. Jason hesitated for a moment, then did something unexpected. He reached out and touched my hand. Not in a fleeting, obligatory way, but in a grounding, steadying way that sent a tremor straight through my chest. I wanted to pull away, to retreat into my cocoon of sorrow, but something inside me resisted. I needed the connection. I needed someone to remind me that I was still alive. "Do you want me to stay for a bit?" he asked, almost shyly, as if he was afraid of overstepping. I looked around the empty house, at the photo frames still standing on the walls, and felt the crushing weight of the silence pressing down again. "Yes," I said before I could think too hard about it. "Please." We moved into the living room, a space filled with both comfort and sadness. Jason sat on the edge of the couch while I curled up on the opposite end, pulling a throw blanket over my lap. For a few minutes, we just sat there, the only sounds the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the old house settling. It was strange, how natural it felt to have him there, like a bridge between the life I had lost and whatever uncertain future lay ahead. We started talking, first about mundane things, like how he was doing at his new job, how the neighborhood had changed while he had been away at college. Then gradually the conversation shifted to deeper waters. He asked about my husband, about what I missed most. It was a simple question, but it broke something open inside me. I found myself talking about things I had kept bottled up for fear of crumbling under their weight. I talked about the late-night laughter, the quiet mornings, the shared glances that said everything without words. Jason listened without interrupting, without trying to fix anything. He just listened, his attention so full and present that it made my chest ache. And then, when I finally ran out of words, he leaned forward and said, "You are allowed to miss him and still need someone." The statement was so raw, so painfully true, that I had to close my eyes for a moment just to steady myself. I opened them to find him closer than before, his face shadowed but his eyes luminous. There was no pity in them, only understanding. Only a quiet, unspoken offering of comfort. For a moment, I felt like I was standing on the edge of something dangerous and beautiful, something that could either heal me or break me further. My heart thudded in my chest, uncertain and yet somehow willing. It had been so long since anyone had looked at me like that, like I was wanted, not pitted. I felt my breath catch, felt the electricity in the small space between us, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to wonder, what if moving forward did not have to mean forgetting? What if it could mean finding something new, something tender and healing, in the ruins of what was lost? Jason must have seen the change in my eyes, because he smiled, a slow, tentative smile that carried with it 1,000 unspoken promises. My pulse raced. I did not know where this night was heading, but for once, I was not afraid. I was alive, and I was ready to feel again. Jason shifted slightly, his knee brushing mine, and the accidental contact made my breath hitch. It would have been so easy to move away, to create distance and pretend the moment had not happened. But I did not. I stayed there, feeling the heat where his skin met mine, letting it seep into the cold, hollow spaces inside me. His eyes searched mine carefully, giving me every chance to retreat, every opportunity to say no. But I stayed rooted to the spot, my heart pounding louder than any words I could have spoken. Without thinking, I reached out and touched his hand, my fingers curling lightly around his. His hand was warm, steady, and slightly calloused, a stark contrast to the trembling vulnerability I felt inside. He responded by turning his palm upward, intertwining his fingers with mine. The gesture so simple yet so intimate that it made my throat tighten with emotion. I had forgotten what it felt like to be touched like this, not out of obligation or duty, but out of genuine care and presence. Jason shifted closer, bridging the remaining distance between us. His hand came up slowly, hesitantly, to tuck a stray strand of hair behind my ear. His fingertips barely grazed my skin, yet it sent a shiver down my spine. For a long moment, he simply looked at me, his gaze heavy with meaning. "You are so beautiful," he whispered, his voice hoarse with something that sounded dangerously close to awe. No one had said that to me in years, not with that kind of raw, unfiltered sincerity. I felt the tears sting the backs of my eyes, but I blinked them away, refusing to let them fall. Instead, I leaned into his touch, letting his hand cradle my cheek. The world outside disappeared, the grief, the loneliness, the endless parade of meaningless condolences, until there was only this moment, only him and me and the aching possibility between us. He moved even closer, and I could feel his breath against my lips. There was a pause, a lingering hesitation, as if he was giving me one final out. But I did not want it. I closed the distance, pressing my lips gently against his. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, as if we were both afraid the other might pull away. But when I did not, when I tilted my head to deepen the connection, he responded with a fervor that made my heart flutter wildly. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me against him, and for the first time in so long, I felt held, truly, deeply held. The kiss grew hungrier, more urgent, as if we were both trying to make up for lost time. My hand slid up his chest, feeling the strength beneath his shirt, the solid reality of him grounding me in a way I had not realized I so desperately needed. He pulled back just enough to look into my eyes, searching for any sign of regret. But all he would have found was yearning, a deep, undeniable need to feel alive again, to be wanted, to be seen. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice rough and low. I nodded, unable to form words, and that was all the permission he needed. He stood, pulling me gently to my feet, and led me toward the staircase. Every step felt weighted with anticipation, every glance between us thick with unspoken promises. By the time we reached my bedroom, my hands were trembling, not with fear, but with the dizzying thrill of what was about to happen. Jason was careful, almost reverent, as he helped me out of my cardigan, his fingers brushing my skin and leaving trails of fire in their wake. He kissed the hollow of my throat, the curve of my shoulder, taking his time as if he wanted to savor every inch of me. I responded in kind, running my hands through his hair, along the strong line of his back, feeling the way his muscles tensed and relaxed under my touch. When he finally laid me down on the bed, it was with a tenderness that made my heart ache. He hovered over me for a moment, his eyes drinking me in as if memorizing every detail. "You are incredible," he murmured, and the wonder in his voice made me believe it too, if only for tonight. The rest of our clothes disappeared slowly, unhurriedly, each piece discarded like a shedding of old lives, old pain. When he touched me, it was not with the fumbling eagerness of youth, but with a deep, aching care that left no part of me unseen or unloved. Every kiss, every caress, every whispered word was a balm to the wounds I had carried hidden for so long. The physical connection between us was electric, but it was the emotional intimacy that undid me, the way he looked into my eyes and never once looked away, the way he made me feel like I was not broken or pitted, but cherished. Our bodies moved together in a rhythm as old as time, a slow, sensual dance that built and built until it consumed us both. When I finally cried out his name, it was not just release I felt, it was rebirth. It was the reclaiming of a part of myself I had thought was lost forever. Afterwards, we lay tangled together, our breaths evening out, the room filled with a soft golden silence. Jason brushed his fingers along my arm, lazy and tender, as if afraid to let go. I rested my head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart beneath my ear. I felt warm, grounded, held. He pressed a kiss to the top of my head and whispered, "You are not alone anymore." I closed my eyes and let the truth of those words wash over me. In the span of a single night, Jason had reminded me that love could take many forms, and that healing, though messy and complicated, was still possible. I had spent so long mourning what was lost that I had forgotten how to hope for what could be found. Wrapped in his arms, I finally allowed myself to believe that life could still hold unexpected beauty, even after so much sorrow. And maybe, just maybe, I was ready to find it again. The morning light crept slowly into the room, casting a soft glow over the tangled sheets and the lingering warmth of the night before. I stirred slightly, half expecting to wake up alone, half bracing myself for the emptiness that had become a constant companion. But Jason was still there, his arm draped protectively over me, his breathing slow and steady against my hair. For a moment, I allowed myself to simply exist in the safety of that embrace, not questioning, not doubting, just feeling. Yet even as my body relaxed against his, my mind began its restless unraveling. Reality, as always, demanded to be acknowledged. I was older, wounded, carrying a lifetime of experiences that he could not possibly understand. What we shared last night had been beautiful, yes, almost sacred. But could it survive beyond the fragile cocoon we had built around ourselves in the darkness? Fear crept in slowly, insidiously, filling the cracks in my heart with cold uncertainty. Jason stirred, sensing my tension, and his fingers brushed lightly down my arm. "Penny for your thoughts," he murmured, his voice still thick with sleep. I smiled sadly, tracing idle patterns on his chest. How could I tell him that I was terrified? That no matter how tender he was, part of me was convinced this was temporary, a beautiful illusion that daylight would shatter. "I was just thinking," I said softly, choosing my words carefully. "That last night felt too good to be real." Jason lifted my chin gently, forcing me to meet his eyes. There was no hesitation there, no flicker of regret, only unwavering sincerity. "It was real," he said firmly, "every second of it. Still, doubt's not at me. What would people think if they knew? Would they see me as desperate, pathetic, clinging to a fleeting touch to soothe my loneliness? Would Jason one day wake up, look at me with clearer eyes, and realize he deserved someone younger, less complicated? I pulled the blanket tighter around myself, as if I could shield my heart from the inevitable hurt. Sensing this shift in me, Jason sat up slightly, propping himself on one elbow. "You are overthinking again," he said with a gentle smile. "You do that when you are scared." I blinked, surprised at how easily he read me. "Maybe I am scared," I admitted. "You are young. You have your whole life ahead of you. I do not want to be a mistake you regret." His face softened, and he reached out to cup my cheek. "You are not a mistake," he said, his thumb brushing away a tear I had not realized had fallen. "You are the bravest, most beautiful woman I know." Last night was not about filling a void. It was about finding something real. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him. But old wounds had a way of whispering lies in the quiet moments. I turned my face into his palm, soaking in his warmth, trying to quiet the voices of doubt inside me. "What happens now?" I whispered. "When the world comes back in? When it is not just you and me in the safety of this room?" Jason hesitated for a moment, as if carefully weighing his next words. "I do not have all the answers," he admitted, "but I know what I feel, and I'm not walking away from this, from you." His words settled over me like a balm, soothing but not erasing the ache of uncertainty. Later, as we got dressed and moved through the motions of an ordinary morning, an unspoken heaviness lingered between us. Every casual brush of his hand, every lingering glance was charged with the awareness that something profound had shifted between us. We were no longer just two lonely souls finding temporary solace. We were tethered now, in a way that scared me as much as it comforted me. The knock at the door startled us both. Jason glanced at me, silently asking if I wanted him to answer it. I shook my head, pulling on my sweater and smoothing down my hair. Whoever it was, they could wait. I needed a moment to gather myself to decide how much of last night's magic I was willing to let the world see. But deep down, I knew the real battle was not against the opinions of others. It was against my own fear. Fear of being vulnerable again. Fear of daring to hope. Fear of opening my heart to something I could not control. Jason came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and resting his chin on my shoulder. "Whatever comes next," he said quietly, "we face it together." His words were simple, but they carried the weight of a promise I had not even realized I needed so badly. For the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself lean into that promise. I let myself believe, not in fairy tales or perfect endings, but in the messy, beautiful possibility of something real, something worth fighting for. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The days that followed were not easy, but they were real. There were moments of hesitation, of second-guessing, of questioning whether this fragile thing between us could survive beyond that one night. But Jason never wavered. When I pulled away out of fear, he pulled me back with patience. When I doubted, he reminded me, with simple gestures and steady words, that love does not always arrive the way we expect it to. Sometimes it comes quietly, slipping through the cracks of a broken heart and planting itself stubbornly, beautifully, against all odds. We kept our connection private, savoring the small moments that only we knew about, the glances across a room, the stolen touches, the late-night conversations that stitched together the wounded parts of us. There were challenges, of course, but we met them hand in hand, understanding that what we had was not perfect, but it was honest. Jason never made me feel like a burden or a mistake. He made me feel seen, wanted, loved, not despite my scars, but because of them. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the world in soft gold, Jason took my hand in his and said, "You saved me too, you know." I smiled through the tears that welled up in my eyes, realizing that maybe this was not just about healing old wounds. Maybe it was about building something new, something neither of us had dared to dream of, but both of us needed more than we had ever known.